we want to get, okay. So we're going to talk about, excuse me, we're going to talk about startup PR and media, as well as marketing, because PR, as we're going to discuss, it's an essential component of your marketing. So that is related as well. So before we get started, I want to do a brief introduction myself and my partner, James Malone. I call him Jim, but his formal name is James, based out of California. Myself, I have over 2 decades of PR and marketing experience, primarily in tech, also nonprofit, life sciences, and started out in, I am Canadian. I started out in Canada with the vendor OmniMark Technologies, was their first marketing hire, helped with their launch. Subsequently went out to California, worked with Alexander Ogilvy in their Menlo Park, Silicon Valley office. Got some great experience, worked with some interesting startups, and then it was boom, and went out on my own. Started a virtual agency. Been working with Jim for almost 20 years, actually more. And really, the thrust of our expertise is helping early stage companies get on the map and facilitating growth through our PR and marketing programs. James, brief introduction for you, please.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I know it's a Saturday. Thanks for taking the time here. My name is James Malone. I also go by Jim or Jimmy. It doesn't matter. I have been in marketing, public relations, content creation, and social media marketing now across the boards for about a quarter of a century, having worked primarily on technology, but also on consumer, entertainment, automotive, just about anything you can imagine. A good portion of my career has been spent as on the side of the media, so working as a media, both a broadcast news producer as well as a print writer and an online writer for various different news sources like NBC, nationally syndicated radio shows, et cetera, et cetera. I have worked with primarily a lot of startups over the years, including I helped to start Amazon.com all the way back in the 90s, and moved on to be brought in later on to work for them on 2 different occasions after that. So yeah, Dave and I know a lot about startups, and startups really they're the future. So we do love working on startups, and we hope to give you guys some great tips and things that you can do to get your startups going and take over the world like Amazon did.
Thanks, Jim. So we want to go through this, respect your time, and go through this very quickly, relatively quickly, about 30, 35 minutes. And then if you have any questions, please jot them down. And at the end, we're happy to, answer questions. So we'll start with the value of media, get into some media and PR, get into some case studies, and go into tips, strategies, processes, and then summarize it up and take your questions. So let's get right to it. And before we do that, just briefly about DFI in terms of the value. We worked with dozens of startups and later stage companies as well, and had a number of them who have gone on to be acquired. Just briefly, AJB, their payment software company in Mississauga, they got acquired by Verifone. Intact, at the end, they got acquired by Sage. We're going to be talking about them. A number of others, Reactivity, XML Security, really geeky company, got acquired by Cisco. Jim headed 123 People, consumer search company that got acquired by European, and a couple others you'll see there. And we're going to talk about the value right now, but basically, with the number of companies that we've worked with, is we've given them a push to the next level, to break through with a new customer, new partner, because especially as a startup, we understand, you have to crawl, straight for every inch of progress. And that's the toughest, getting your first customer, getting your first partner, investment, capital, if that's the route you take. And so we mirror where you are. That's why we, our experience fits in well with startups, because that's what we do from a PR end. it really, we're crawling and we're really fighting for our clients to break through to say, hey, you're a nobody, but we're going to make you somebody. And it's our job to get the attention of the media so you could break through with key influencers, media, so that it helps to grow your business. So to summarize, the value of PR, number one, business development. It's actually the second bullet, because immediate, you get an article, you get inquiries, and help to facilitate revenue. And then, so that's a short-term value proposition for PR. And the second is it really lays the groundwork. We're going to go through a couple of case studies, but it helps to build. So it's building your brand over the long term. It's a cumulative effect, PR and marketing, getting your name out there and pushing more and more of the market and stakeholders into your court. And that's what PR helps to do, as well as media. Jim, anything to add on the value of media and PR?
Well, yeah, the value of media and PR is also seen in its cost effectiveness, in that compared to, say, advertising is, if you're going to do it and do it right, it's going to be exceptionally expensive. That is the bottom line. To do events, they cost a lot of money to do each and every event. You can't just do one, you have to do several throughout the year. So whereas, and even social marketing that I do social marketing as well. I've seen the price can start off low, but to actually have a broad campaign on multiple channels can cost you in the thousands, even tens of thousands. So public relations and traditional media actually can come in much cheaper. It's a much more cost-effective option, especially for small, early-stage startup companies, those who maybe have an angel round or a first round of funding. So, and it helps to, again, as Dave mentioned, it builds your brand, gets your name out there, and helps to build that presence in your market, in your space. And then, of course, helps to grow from there.
Thanks, Jim. And so this is an example. It goes way back. One of my first clients in Silicon Valley. It's a cloud accounting company. It transformed itself. The company is called Intact, INTACCT, and we started off with them. It was really 2 decades ago, but the lessons applied then, they really are pertinent today, in that all they had, could be, some of you guys out here, is that they had a beta product. They had some seed capital, and they wanted to go to market and grow. And so what we came in, they had, in addition to the beta product, they had a couple beta testers. And I said, help us get the word out. So we started out hitting these trade publications. Now their market was, they were targeting accounting and financial professionals, a new way of doing accounting, which is now commonplace over the web. And so we were very aggressive getting in with these trades, Journal of Accountancy, Accounting Today, and getting these influencers, influential editors and reporters who influence the accounting and financial professionals to get interested in the product and service. And so we helped them gain traction with their initial paid customers, built some momentum, and then within a year they got a major founder funding, over $6 million, with Hummer Winblad, a major VC, Silicon Valley. Fast forward 15 plus years, maybe it was 17 years, they ended up getting acquired, $850 million plus acquisition by Sage, one of the major software accounting companies. And so the lesson is, and Jim, if you can comment, is that the value of the trade, it may not be well known to everybody, all consumers, but it's very important, depending on your product, to get that niche, to get that vertical, those vertical media and influencers to really give your product or service a boost. Jim, comments? You were on this account.
Yeah. I actually came in on the account. This is one of the first 2 accounts I started working with Dave, 20 years ago on. And I was brought in when they had already gotten the ball rolling. They had already been going at it for a year. They had them established with the trade publications, and that is something that as a media specialist, I repeat that to everybody over and over again. The Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, NBC News, these are all great. And yes, you do want to get in those, and we can get you in those. But you want to be in your Information Week, your Accounting Today, your Payment Source magazines. You want to be in there as much as you can on a monthly basis if you can. And that is really your bread and butter, because that's where those who are going to buy your products and or services, that's where they're reading all the time. Now, again, don't get me wrong, Wall Street Journal is great. And when I was brought in by Dave and the other account members, it was to go after big business press because of the groundbreaking they had done in getting so many trade publications. So the name had gotten out there, and what it allowed me to do is I walked in there and had a much easier time. I really did, because of the work they had already done in placing it in things like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. So again, the trade publications, the more placements, and not only are you getting in front of your potential customers, partners, and investors, but or those who will acquire your company, if that's what you're looking for, but you're also getting the attention of the bigger people, the bigger players, including the big media like the Wall Street Journal or TechCrunch.
Right. And just to follow up the comment, Jim was talking earlier slide about cost effectiveness, of PR. Now we know, if you're a CEO, if you're just starting up, VP of marketing of a startup, you have to make investment decisions. Where do you put your marketing dollars at work? And in line with that, you'll find even today is that PR is has a very high ROI if done properly and very low risk, because again, this is an example of one article gets you that one extra customer inquiry or partner inquiry, which really helps to build momentum to get to the next level really faster than putting out a tweet or blogging. So that is the power and the value, going back to the value proposition of PR to consider.
And there's a great example of that in one of the later slides. I'll go over it when we get there. It's from a story I placed for one of our later on clients.
Okay. My screen is a little stuck. Okay. So in terms of, getting this coverage that we talk about, how do you do it? We have a template. I mean, we've done it in our sleep for years. In terms of the steps you have to take. Now, each step, it's customized per client, which we'll go through. But to summarize, it's basically 2 steps. Create your story, create your narrative, create compelling content, and then promote it. So those are the 2 basic things, very elementary. The challenge is, we'll go through those steps, the challenges and what you have to do to make that happen effectively. So we start off. If you're a startup and you're starting from scratch, you don't really have your story in place, what we do, the first step we recommend is to build a messaging or storyline framework. And in order to do that properly, you really have to look at your external environment, the customers, trends, what the media is covering, as well as what are you doing? What are you bringing to market in terms of the product or service? And then putting it all together so that it acts as basically a base for not only PR, but for all your marketing activities. We'll touch on that later. So we have a process, a branding, messaging workshop, where it's basically a brainstorm session. We pull out all the elements, put it in a framework, and then basically you use that for all, it can be used for all your different marketing, biz dev, IR activities, but you've done that. And what the one recommendation we do make, however you do this, well, first off, you create this framework so you have your story in place. And also to do it, you bring in an outsider, because inevitably, even the smartest CEO, you're very close to your company, you're working on your product, your service, building out your company. If you bring in an outsider, they have a more objective view, and inevitably we've had comments. Oh, not only is this working for PR marketing, it's helping us crystallize our strategy. Jim, any comments on this process?
Yeah, definitely. As Dave knows, this is a really big part for me because, as a media person throughout the years, as well as a marketing and PR person, the communication side, the content side, is critically important. And when you create content is basically, that's the new age term. Same messaging means the same thing. We would create messaging back in the day. Now we create content. So it's the same thing when I refer to that. In creating that content, that's what gets the attention of your customers, potential partners, investors, those who might acquire your company, those who want to work for your company, the people that want to come and work for you, engineers. Of course, tech companies always looking for engineers, right? As well as the media that are covering this, bloggers, influencers, people at trade shows. So really, the messages you create are critically important. And I really do want to highlight that again. They are critically important. And part of that is it's not just for marketing, PR, and content marketing and social media marketing. It is also used, it's very useful for every other aspect of the company, from branding to sales to your biz dev team. We have even seen it help out legal teams. The descriptions we've created for things help out the legal team in cases. So it really is something that is very important for a company to have that in place for when you get started. And then, of course, you can customize it and change it as time goes on.
Right. Thanks, Jim. And this is an example. This is a next step. After you do that, build that framework, what you want to do is really paint your story. And when we say paint in quotes, we're talking about educate the market, create the narrative on your view of the world. So this is an example. This was right around when social media was getting started, the mid 2000s, talking about, okay, look, well, first high-end software on the web. And so what we did is we painted all the other related players in the field, and we can point out, okay, we fill the gap. This is where we fit. So what you want to do is educate the market, again, not only on your product service, but talking about the arena in general that you participate in, and why, answering basically why you should pay attention. And with PR, we're talking about influencers, media editors, bloggers, or social media influencers who will have an impact, who will motivate your end target. So this is an example with LookWow, and then this is standard. I'm guessing most of you are familiar with the press release. This is a standard tool that the media today still looks for. It's, okay, send me a press release. And the thing I want to point out here is similar to our Twitter age, where you're limited to whatever it is, 100, 200 characters these days. The media will only pay attention, really, the headline, first paragraph. So you have to boil it down very quickly. So our challenge, especially when we work with tech companies, because we know, some of you may be involved with thousands of lines of code, and our job is really to boil it down to, okay, a 7-word headline, a 15-word sentence, to get the attention of the media, so that we help you break through with them, who will help you break through with your end customer. Jim, anything to add here?
Yeah, definitely. The press release is just like the content creation is extremely important, and this one I understand greatly because, again, having worked on both sides, from the PR marketing side and from the media side, like when I was an NBC news producer in Silicon Valley, I would get on average at least a dozen or 2 dozen emails with a press release every single day. sometimes there are days where I literally had over 600 or 700 of them. No kidding. So you really, of course, you don't have the time to go through 600 or 700 emails. Nobody has that kind of time. So what you do is you scan through, you look at the headlines of the email. The headline catches your attention. Then you look at if that's got your attention, then you look at the press release. And as Dave said, you don't have the time usually to read the whole thing. You skim it at best, but you check out the headline or subhead if there is one in that opening paragraph. And that's where the core of the message is. And I can't tell you the number of companies I did stories on at NBC News, as well as for the online news outlets that I wrote for, and the radio news that came from just their headline alone. That led me to be interested. I took a closer look at it later on, booked them in. There you go. They're on TV, they're on the radio, presenting their company name and story, doing their branding through the media. So it is as important as Dave said. It really is.
Thanks, Jim. So in terms of tips in dealing in breaking through with the media, we really break it in to two parts: strategic, and we're going to go on to tactical. It just, before you get started, the process, breaking in with the media, think of it as biz dev. You know, you're targeting customers, partners, maybe you're seeking funding, targeting investors. So you're selling. That's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. You're selling products or services. We're selling stories. And like we alluded to today, at the startup phase, that's the challenge. Nobody knows you. So it's that's where our experience comes into play. But just breaking through with getting one article, one mention, and that helps get further along. Get another one, just like the customers. First few customers are typically the biggest challenge. Same with the media. And so what you want to do is just that's our process. And we'll go through this also, is you want a steady stream of activity. And also, you know, we've had it before. We start with a startup, maybe get one article, one mention. And, you know, the client says, well, that's okay, but what have you guys been doing? And what some clients don't understand, well, we have to explain is, well, we really have a top 30 list and 29 have paid attention. They said, not right now, but we've set the groundwork for future coverage. And that's where again, this continuous level of activity. So you may hit get one article today, but that's where you follow up the next month. Maybe you get 2 and 3 and so on and so on. And that's where you get these overnight sensations is, well, really it took 2 or 3 years, but then all the media paid attention instead of maybe 1%, 2%, 10%, 20% of the media. So having that biz dev mindset for the media, and then the tactical, Jim talked about headline, pitch, get to the point, and study, you know, what does, just like what does your customer want? What's the need? Where's the pain point? What does the journalist write for? Everybody writes about, especially these days, if you're aware, there's a huge shortage. There's been massive layoffs over the last decade in the media industry. So media are so overworked. So you have to get right to the point and understand, what are they writing about? Why would they care? Are they the right person? And then make the right succinct pitch to them to get their attention, and also understand how to approach them. So as we talked about, regular flow of news, that helps build credibility, build buzz with all your stakeholders. And again, do your homework, because you want to get the media. You're selling them a product, which is a story. Jim, you're the media relations king, and with your NBC News and all your experience, what do you have to add? Excuse me.
Thank you. I hope I can live up to that for everybody. But I think what he's going into, I'd like to give Dave that one example. It's a favorite of mine that really does highlight 2 areas that we've talked about here together, and that is the importance of building the process and being patient, because it can take time. There was a client, and I did something that we do on occasion. I guaranteed them that I could get them in the Wall Street Journal. Guaranteed a startup company I could get them in the Wall Street Journal, but I said, here's the deal. You have to give me anywhere from 1 year to 2 years. Okay, I might be able to do it within a month or two, but give me 1 year to 2 years. What they did is they listened to our strategy and our tactics, and it paid off for them in a very big way. What ended up happening was it was a year and 3.5 or 4 months into the process, not just a Wall Street Journal story, but a Wall Street Journal cover of the text section that was 2 or 3 paragraphs long with the photo. So it couldn't have played out any better. Now, the part of this that links to what we talked about with headlines and press releases is that the reporter, I knew her well. She said, "I'm interested. I'm not going to cover anything like this now, but send me what comes out. I want to hear what these guys are doing." So she wanted to know, wanted to see the progress of the company and how it developed, expanded in the market. And she almost did a story a little bit early on one of the other ones, but her editor put her on something else. And what happened then was it was actually a release that was about a niche new product and service they were doing for a specific industry area. And that was something she was already working on, so it fit perfectly. So it was all about timing, the right press release, the right headline, and the email I had, and it all came together. And it ended up being not just a Wall Street Journal story, but a very big, feature story on the cover of their technology section. And this is for a company that's barely 2 years old. So you really can't wish for anything better than that. And that again shows that you have to have good solid news, good solid content to take out to your potential customers and partners, to your audience, to the media, to influencers, to social media marketing people, and doing it in the right way. And having a great headline to catch attention. I mean, subject lines in emails and headlines on anything that can carry a headline are vastly important.
And Jim, just to jump in the process, remember verbase. So also, just like war, once the first shot is made, all plans are, shelved. So not exactly that, but it's a process. So it's not just we talk to you, the client, we come up, we say, okay, here's our great pitch. We say, okay, this is our first pitch. And then we get feedback from the media. And then if it's not biting, it's an iterative process. Say, okay, what's going on? What are we missing here? What's the feedback we're getting from media? And then we play with it. And Jeff, maybe you want to talk about that verbase example in that we keep pushing. So it's not just okay, we're sending out one email. It's we're testing and we're tweaking, and then we keep pounding through again, especially the startup phase. We're doing whatever we can to help you break through, so you get that one big hit, which helps drive your business forward.
And let me finish this one, Dave. This one, I love this story, everybody. This one, okay, Dave and I had what we thought was the perfect pitch letter, and it was outside. I think it literally was one of our award-winning letters. What we did was we have multiple different headlines or subject lines for the email. We chose one to use, and it was a little bit longer than we liked, so we took out 2 words from it. What happened was we pitched it for about a week and a half. We didn't get by. I booked one. We had one interview booked, I think, Dave. And then we're going, okay, wait a minute. We know this is good. What's going on? So I went back to that original pitch. I put the 2 words back in. So I said, Dave, here, you keep pitching. Try a different headline. Let me try this. What I had was in 48 hours, I had about 6 or 7 media booked for that, including Business Week magazine, TechCrunch, Mashable. This was for a Hong Kong-based company. It was the South China Morning Post. It was literally floodgates opened up, and all that. We didn't actually change the headline, the subject line. We did not change a single word. We didn't add, subtract, or change anything in the pitch. All we did was add the 2 words that I took out to keep it a little bit shorter. That's it. And you can see that again, it's tweaking things and finding that perfect mix that gets the media's attention, and thereby, of course, gets it in front of your audience and helps you get the audience's attention. So it really, it's just 2 little words were added to an email headline, and we ended up with, I think it was 14 total stories placed for that startup. And it was a search engine taking on Google.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun.
So this is an example of what we're talking about, having a steady flow of news. This company had been around a while, AJB. They wanted to get more visibility, and we were brought in to do that. and we used a number of different tactics, trend stories to get the word out. This was the chip and pin a few years ago. Was it 5-6 years ago? In the US, they were lagging behind Canada. And we helped to get some coverage here, some trade coverage in banking and bank and tech publications, American Banker. And then eventually we also did get TechCrunch. They got acquired a few years ago by a public company, Verifone. And what it did is what we're talking about, their visibility went to the next level, inevitably took them to the next level. Well, it put them in a position to get to the next level of partners, customers. I don't know what they were acquired for, but we know the PR helped to facilitate interest, and we're assuming that it contributed to the higher valuation that they got, although we're not privy to those details. Jim, anything to add on AJB?
Yeah, I think this is a good example as well, that it's not just the regular company news you have of new customers or partners, new products or services coming out, investment, say, but this is one thing where we actually used something that I'm a big fan of. Dave knows this, he hears it from me on a monthly basis, trend stories. And when you talk about trend stories are something that could already be a trend that's active in the industry, market, or media, or it's something that you create, something new and eye-opening, eye-catching, that will get the attention of the media and the audience. In this case, it was something that I thought the company was doing that was great, and I talked to them for literally over a year and I advised them to do a trend story on it. And then Dave and I talked them into it. They went for it. We did a great trend story release, which ended up being, as you can see, the American Banker logo there. It ended up being a multiple page feature story in American Banker, which is one of the two primary trade publications. There were a couple of other stories from it as well, but that was really wonderful. I think another great example of what came from the building up is, as we continue to put out press releases, get media interest and influencer interest and attention and stories placed, at one point they had a really great piece of news coming out. Dave, I know you remember this one, and it ended up being a Business Week article. That Business Week article, that one article alone, led to them having a phone call come in from somebody they had been targeting for 2 years as a customer. It took one news story with one good media placement, and they had a top 100, a Fortune 100 company contacting them to become a customer, or I think it was a partnership, wasn't it, Dave?
Right. And just to close off, Jim, the point, going back to the value of PR, what Jim just highlighted, getting the call, it's because you don't have a biz dev person knocking on the door saying, hey, we have this great product service, when can we have a meeting? It's the media. Well, it's debatable, but they're still considered to be a neutral arbitrator, especially with tech and business. So if they are considered objective and they're talking positively about your company, and one of your target customers see that, it's really persuasive. It's a powerful case to say, hey, I'm going to pick up the phone or email this, this company to learn more, as opposed to directly from biz dev or even doing some social media posting. It's not from you, it's perceived objective. So that's another big value proposition for PR. So in terms of, where PR fits, again, we understand, startups, they have to be judicious with their investments, where they allot capital, and especially in marketing, there are a lot of different areas. But PR, it's really adds value to all of the different marketing elements or activities that you may be involved with, whether you're targeting the Chinese consumer for WeChat, social media influencer, e-commerce. You still need a compelling story. and then that feeds, then you can repurpose, as Chip was talking about earlier, you repurpose that content for whatever activity you're talking about. But that's still critical that you nail that. And just as an aside, we do work with a member of the startup Chinese GTA community, Li Lu, who is LL Brand Lab. She is a specialist in some of these areas, visual marketing and influencer marketing. But it's a collaborative. All these activities are collaborative, but at the center is getting your story right, getting the strategy of how you want to communicate, and then deciding on, okay, where do I want to do that? So really taking a step back, the big picture of what you want to achieve. Jim, anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I think that many people these days, they look at advertising as its own entity, but people look at, well, should we do PR or should we do social media marketing? Social media and content marketing. And actually, if you can, you really should do both, because they really do complement each other perfectly. For example, things that you come up with, trends and some of the wonderful things and videos that they come up with for social media marketing can very easily be used in PR, and vice versa. The press releases, the headlines, the taglines, the news stories, the trends, story placements can, of course, be shared through the various different channels of social, from Facebook and Twitter to YouTube, even LinkedIn, so Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. So they really actually work hand in hand very well together.
Right. And just to reiterate, our philosophy is that PR, it's an essential program for your marketing business. However, we're not tied to doing things one particular way. Whatever your business objectives are, that's going to dictate the strategy. So we're flexible there. It goes back to the high level, marketing elements. What is the customer pain? What is the problem you're solving? What's the value proposition? Customer motivation, and defining your, influencer characteristics. That's going to determine the strategy. But what's consistent is, no matter what marketing strategy you go forward with, you need this compelling story. You need that to build your business. So no matter what set of activities you embark on, you still need that story. So that is critical. That's a part of PR, which is that is a necessary element for really your business, regardless of what media activity you're going forward with. Jim, any last comments on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Dave 100% on this, and I don't think there's anything else for me to comment on that. I think you said it all very, very concisely there.
Okay, so in terms of getting started with PR, there are a few options. For us, I mean, it depends where the company's at, but we have a template for getting a startup launched. It's 8 to 10 weeks, and it goes through really those items in terms of building your story and getting to the media, creating we showed you a launch release. So going through the process, there are all these different activities. If anybody's interested, we have detailed, we could lay that out in detail. So there's a launch plan. If you are interested in PR services, you really have to look at who's a good fit. In addition to their relevant experience and their skill set, you have to think of them, they're like an employee. For example, the clients that we're working with, in touch with them almost on a daily basis, almost without exception. There's the odd day that we're not in touch. So you really have to enjoy working with that agency or those people, and also again, be clear on your objectives, what you're trying to achieve, and what is the proposal that that agency or consultant comes back to you to help you achieve them. And if you're dealing with large agencies, confirm who am I actually dealing with, who's on the account. So that's the suggestion. And If you want to do it yourself, there are some resources, Public Relations Society of America or Canada, International Association of Business Communicators, IABC. But really, you could do that, but it's not really your expertise. I mean, you could try it. Just briefly, how I started again is I was a marketing hire at a tech company. We hired an agency. I learned from them. I went to Alexander Ogilvy PR, Silicon Valley. I learned from them. Then I could do it myself. So you could do it, but it's not recommended you you represent yourself as your own lawyer. So that's what we would suggest. A third option is we offer coaching services. So if you have a really marketing savvy, let's say community manager, that's something that we can introduce principles, some of these processes they can learn and eventually wean off and do more of the PR nuts and bolts on a day-to-day basis. Jim, any comments on selecting an agency or getting started with PR?
Yeah, definitely. What Dave mentioned is really important. You need to work well with somebody. Not only should they be, have the right experience in the right industry, of course, have the right kind of context that you're looking to make placements with influencers and media, but they've got to be somebody that you like what they're saying. You're a good fit personality-wise as well. That's something we definitely recommend. And I do love what Dave said. I actually liken doing PR yourself, especially because, again, I am a former media person. I still work with the media on occasion. I would liken it actually to doing your own dentistry work. I wouldn't do my own dental work if you paid me $1 billion. So now, and again, you can do it, okay? But there is so much involved with marketing, PR, content creation, messaging, pitching the media, that it really would be like trying to take your own molar out. It would be impossible. I would not recommend doing your own dental work or being your own lawyer, like Dave said. So it is something where you need to have a set of experts that know the industry, know the area, know what to do and how to do it. And you just got to find the right group to work with you.
And just to finish up, and we're happy to take questions, with repeating, just like biz dev, PR, media, you want a steady level of activity. In biz dev, you land one big customer, you don't stop with biz dev. You don't fire your VP of biz dev. You say, let's keep going, let's keep growing. Same concept with PR. Keep it going, keep building that momentum, that brand, that visibility to help build your business. We've gone over this a number of times. Understand who you're targeting, what they want. And again, we work PR as an essential program within social media marketing. And really, again, one or two key hits for a startup, that makes all the difference, can really make a difference in helping you grow and get to that next level. Jim, any final comments before we take questions?
Yeah, again, I think that PR and the media are just vastly important to any company at any level, no matter how big or how small you're a startup. And getting those first couple of story placements, they can set the precedence for where your company's going to go, how good it's going to be, how big it's going to get. So it really is that important, and it's something you want to really take the time, look into, and put some solid effort into that area.
And whoops. We're happy to take any questions. And
yeah, okay.
Brian,
yeah.
Happy to answer any questions on or offline, and you can find us on LinkedIn or right here on Meetup. Sure. Brian, let me pass the floor back to you.
Okay, really appreciate David and Jim, and so the floor is open. Anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, Brian Chandu here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, for people like us who are, Brian, thanks to you for getting me on this. We met several years ago, and for people like us who are established people with 7-8 years of experience. What would be your suggestion in terms of starting on PR? Because PR is something ignored by even people like us because we are more social media focused, LinkedIn, etc., right? So what should be the first step for us to get onto PR so that it stays in our radar?
Well, I think the first step is taking a step back and defining what it is you're trying to achieve as a business, and then your marketing objectives. Like we talked about, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to sell, let's say, dentist a certain product, and defining how do you sell, how do you break into that market? So really taking a step back at the big picture in terms of the business and marketing objectives, and then determining, like we said, objectives determine the strategy, and then determine, okay, if we need to influence dental editors, for example, well, that's how we should go, and this is how we create the story, and go through the process that we highlighted in terms of the building blocks of creating your story, and then setting out a timeline for launching if you're going to launch to the media, doing that. But the first step is being clear on your corporate objectives, your marketing objectives, and then figuring out where that story and where the media relation strategy fits into your big picture objective and strategy.
Yeah, let me add into that real quick that it is what Dave's saying. You want to have your overall goals, your company goals and strategies in place. We then create a strategy from that, and not only how we're going to do that with the media, but what exactly your goal is, or various different goals, say goals plural, can determine not only which media we're targeting, which influencers we're targeting, but who at the different publications, because there are, of course, so many different categories, areas they cover. It, say, for example, the Wall Street Journal or TechCrunch, there may be just one, or there could be as many as a dozen different reporters and editors we're going after. But we have to know what it is you're looking to present, the message you're looking to provide your audience with, so we then can create that message and take it to the right people at the media to get those stories placed.
Right. And one service we alluded to, but we offer a standalone service, a branding strategy workshop session, where we basically facilitate a brainstorming session, and then from that we pull these nuggets out of you and put it into basically a strategy and storyline framework, so you can figure out if that's something that you needed assistance with. So that's it. The PR, it slides in, it supports your bigger picture objectives.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Very welcome.
Okay, I saw Patrick has a question. He raised his hand.
Yeah. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, Patrick.
Perfect. Hey guys, I'm Patrick, and I'm an IT compliance manager at Richter LLP, and that's a professional service firm focused on the audit and IT compliance requirements for some of the banks and companies in Canada. One of the questions, sorry, I joined late, but I did see your presentation on the company being featured on the Bloomberg Business Week, and I'm a Business Week active reader, so I do get that every week. My question is that we understand that the company, say for example, in this case, Richter, wants to present the best impression, if it were to feature itself in an article, but the writer or the journalist still wants to maintain their journalism integrity and independence. So I was wondering if you can comment on the how, say for example, in this case, Richter could exert some of the impacts or try to present its best image while the journalist can maintain their integrity in that sense. And if you can give a specific example that you have worked with in the past, that'd be great. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, Dave, let me handle this.
Well, what I would say is, you know, parts of the campaigns we identified with one of the case studies, HAB, where we were talking about trends, and this is a technology trend. Oh, and by the way, this company has to, this company, by the way, is a leader in this space. So that is one tactic, is the educational approach, because it's claimed we have, you know, freedom of speech here and the freedom of press. So advertising is one thing where you can get the story out exactly how you want. You pay for that. So this is not paid. And what you're doing is, remember, I'm not sure if you were in, Patrick, well, you know, one of the slides where we're talking about paint your story, create your narrative. So that's where you're educating the journalists and say, look at the compliance world from our point of view. This is how we see it. You know, these are the shortcomings, and this is the value, and this is the opportunity. This is why it's important for you to cover. So doing that educational piece, and then you know, in the end, it's up to the media to cover it or not cover it how they wish, because that is PR, as opposed to advertising where it's guaranteed printed how you want it, when you want it. So that's what you do. That's what you can do, is educate. You know, you have an educational campaign. Hey, this is what we want to educate the market. That's one you know, example, and it's continuous. So ideally, it's not just once. So you have a campaign, you know, a 3-6 month campaign. We're going to educate the market on these 3 components of compliance, for example. And then I mean, that's the practice of PR in terms of getting your story, which is compelling, doing the research, and what is this media person or outlet interested in, figuring it out, then customizing your presentation and pitches that will align your version of the story with what they want. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave brought up something there that I need to really highlight. It's what I wanted to say right at the beginning, though, was he mentioned the research. And like I said, you might have one person, just one, say one of these accounting publications or a fintech publication, but you might have half a dozen different people that you can go after, and each of them for slightly different or even the same story pitch. So really, let's say, like for your example, Patrick, we need to take a close look at what you have, help you create that message, this very specific niche message that you're coming up with there, and then take it to the right person. And we would actually literally categorize the people. So say there are, say, a payment source, you'd have 3 different potential targets there. One of them is the person we're going to go after first and foremost for this story. Same thing with, say, the Wall Street Journal, American Banker, Accounting Today. There's one or two people there that are the primary contact we're going to go after. If that doesn't work, then we use our tweaked pitch to go after the other ones as well. And that, of course, is based on what you want to say, what you want them to present to their audience, which is, of course, your audience.
Jennifer, question?
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Jennifer, can you unmute yourself? Does Jennifer have control, Brian, or can I do that?
I've already asked her to unmute, so yeah, Jennifer, are you there?
Or if it's in the chat box, if that's easier.
Hold on, give me a second. Oh,
That's okay. Do you want to send the message in the chat box, Jennifer? I see your message. If that's easier. Sure. 2 questions, go for it. Conversion of PR versus digital marketing. Well, it depends what you mean by conversion. I mean, conversion of PR into sales versus most of the content in slides is qualitative. Well, it really depends, because what we do is we get you to the table. You know, for example, we have one, you know, recent client who said we recently went through this major campaign with a new product and their client using the technology, and then we were told that, wow, we received 8 inquiries out of this from major companies. Now, how many deals they close out of that? We're not closing the deal. What we do is we get you to the table, and then it's up to you, your product and your biz dev team. They have to get you across the goal line, so they have to close the deal. And it really depends. I mean, that is B2B. So if it's a more immediate B2C, it's really customized. Other than we can say, yeah, you're right. I mean, it is more qualitative. It's just, you know, what we can point to is, you know, I was out in Silicon Valley for a few years. What I love about their philosophy is they buy into, you know, as a marketing PR professional, they buy into the fact that PR marketing, you're a partner at the table with product dev, with biz dev, with the strategic people. So you need it. That's why we say it's an essential component to take your company to the next level. So that is you know, that is proven over time, that Silicon Valley way of getting your name out, being aggressive with PR and marketing. Jim, do you have anything to add? I'm reading the next question.
I added it through the chat tour already.
Oh, this is your comment? Okay. In some cases, studies show roads somewhere more.
We can put it in chart format, and if you actually were to lay out, what it requires, Jennifer, is we would need to get data, stats, and charts from the customer, say, for example, your company. What we do then is we take the charts from, say it's been using PR Newswire or the other main distributor. We then link that above and put in the charts, the press releases going out, their distribution dates and times, and what the results were from that, and then stories that were placed, whether they be print, online, broadcast, influencers, what have you. And then what you always see is, for the days where a press release comes out and the week following, you'll see a number of stories that day and over the next week. What you see is you see these huge spikes, sometimes very huge. At the very least, good moderate spikes from, say, small releases to massive spikes of customer inquiries, phone calls, emails coming in, partner inquiries, investor inquiries as well, depending upon, of course, what the news was. And you see these huge spikes, and it definitely shows how public relations, you know, pays off.
Yeah, and Jennifer, you did hit on a great point, is that you know, with social media, digital marketing, you have your metrics, number of views and shares, and it is very concrete. But okay, but how does that actually drive the business versus PR, which is historically, it's tough to nail it down to a science, saying, okay, you got you know, you did this PR campaign, you got 3 articles, you got, this much revenue. But for over a period of time, a year, 3 years, 5 years, you can see that it resulted in a substantial ROI, because we say, I mean, it depends what you're dealing with too. If you're talking about a B2B product, let's say a product or service where one customer may be 250K potentially, all you need is one of those, maybe every 3 years. So the return is there. And I would urge you to look at, any company the two things, any company that you've heard of, look at their newsroom and you'll say, hey, they're doing PR, they're active, they're getting their word out, not only through social, but through the traditional PR media that we talked about. And the other thing, look at the digital platforms, Facebook. What do we talk about? Facebook news and LinkedIn news. Well, where are they getting their news from? The stories originate from the traditional media sources that we're talking about, and then those add value and they're amplified on the social channels. So an exact ROI is a challenge, but it's clear, the evidence it's right there that it offers tremendous value to companies. Now, we would have to go through your particular circumstance to say, hey, this is where we could add value. If a startup, limited resource, like it depends. We would have to learn more about your situation to give you a more precise potential ROI on your investment if you're interested in going that way. We'd like to show the human resources marketing.
Actually, Jennifer, can you maybe elaborate a little more? Are you looking at the ROI for, say, maybe getting new recruits or new staff? I'm trying to understand the human resources part of this.
Right. And the other thing I would say, as we talked about with the case study at the start, where the startup was focused on a very niche area, accounting and finance professionals. That's all they wanted, because they knew they were interested in their product. They needed to get those, and they're also product champions. So they were the early adopters. So it was a very scaled down program. It was not broad education. So that's why, again, we say, the steps are basic, but the particular strategy for each company, it really depends. Goes back to what we talked about earlier. What is your objective? Are you educating a broad-based audience? That's one thing. If you're a very niche product and you want to start off very small, a niche market, a niche vertical, then that's something different. Headline and top paragraph. How the work splits. Well, yeah, to clarify that, what we do basically, the media, they work with specific tools for them to even consider you. So it's really a pressure. If you're knocking on a journalist's door and saying, hey, I have some news for you, they expect to see a press release. That's just a standard way for them to consider doing business with you, working with you, writing an article. So what we do, again, going back to create your narrative, paint your story. So you're painting your story. And then if the journalist's interested, all you can do is give your side of the story. And then it's really out of your hands. You attempt to shape the story your way, but in the end, you have to hand off. And we have had, actually, we have worked with companies who didn't really understand the media, say, hold it, how come the article turned out one way? That's not what we told them. Well, in the end, that's a free press. That's our society, is that you can tell your story, and then the media, unless it's really inaccurate, it's false, then you have a claim. But if it's not that, then the media has the right to write what they want. So you give them your best pitch, and then it's up to them. They write the article or cover the story how they wish.
And Dave, I think the important thing to add to this is that when it comes to trying to influence, say, a journalist or an editor on how to do a story, that's part of our job. So we have to make sure that we stay focused on what your key message or messages, plural, are. Additionally, it's not just, say, a press release. It's also things like fact sheets, data sheets, product sheets. So say it's a product we're taking from a technology company, say it's a business software product, business management product, just as an example. We would not only have the press release announcing what's new and what you're doing, but then we'd have the product sheet that backs that up and shows them the finite details on what the product is, how it works, the impact on the market it has, costs, et cetera, et cetera. So in this way, what we do is through our talking with them and going back and forth through email, Twitter, whatever, as well as using the press release and other data and information, product, fact sheets, et cetera, et cetera. That way we influence the reporter to write the story in certain ways. And there are some where, again, we do have, I don't want to say we have power, because that's not the right way to put it. It's that we can influence them, and we do that all the time to clients' advantage.
And to answer your question, your other question, I'd like to know how the process works. First iteration of stories, PR firm takes it from there and polish. It really depends, I would say. Sometimes if we're working with a startup, we've worked with that before, where a company is two people. You have the CEO and maybe somebody else. And so with that, the CEO basically puts all of it on us, and we'll have a conversation. Hey, we're doing a debrief. Let's say we're doing this story, and he could just recite, this is what I want. These are the keys. These are the key messages. So we'll do a Q&A, and we'll just run with it. Get it to the executive for approval. They may have input, so you go back and forth. Now the other end, companies who are a little bigger, if they have an internal marketing resource, they may start up a document, send it to us. We'll ask questions, and we'll work together. That's why we talked about how expertise and experience, related skills are important, but you want to be able to work well together, because it is back and forth. Because you inside the company, you have certain knowledge about the company, the product, services. We don't. We're an outsider, so we give you that objective view, but then you're going to have some product specific knowledge that we don't. So that's where we really work back and forth. Sometimes we send out questions to you, say fill it in, then we'll do the draft. Sometimes the company may prefer to do the draft, and then we'll do the editing. So it really depends, but it is a collaborative process. So it's important that you work well, you enjoy working with that person or group, because there is a lot of back and forth and give and take. Oh, this is right, we want to change this, and then you polish it. Yeah, we go through, we start out with version 1. By the time it gets out over the wire, it may be version 8, sometimes version 10, with all the approvals, and if they're outside partners and customers.
And I'd like to add to that, Dave. This is one, I love what Dave is saying here, because when we go back and forth, this is how, along with everything that you and your companies, all of you, present to us, there are things that we can find and pick off in there, maybe something that wasn't mentioned in too much detail, that could be a great trend story, or could be a perfect niche market story. And Dave, how many times over the years have we come up with literally hundreds of stories that have come out of just doing the basic interaction and research and building your core messages? And it leads to other pieces of news that we get to take advantage of, for your companies, for your products and services. So in going back and forth like that, it leads to a plethora of news that can be used. Some of it is official news announcements. Some are more cool trend stories, industry impacting stories, things that have effect on investors and investor relations. So it's literally leads to a ton of different stories and potential stories for you.
Right. Does that answer it, Jennifer, or any other questions? Jennifer or anybody else?
Yeah, anybody with any questions?
Any questions at all? Fire away.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I have a question. It's like, so besides like the traditional press releases, how do the traditional media journalists got their news leads? Besides like press release and their Twitter account. So
There's a
Oh, how do I
number of-
generate leads?
now how do
number of ways.
the traditional media journalists got their leads, news leads?
Some of them are doing their own research, but many of them, they do take a look at
Oh,
besides a press release, sometimes a trend is not put in the form of a press release. It could be in a media alert. A media alert is a little bit different. It's sort of like a shortened press release that you just send them in an email, kind of like a pitch letter. And trend stories are one of the ways. And they could be, many media actually take the time, like I said, using the example of that Wall Street Journal reporter. I got in touch with her, I think it was February of the year before. She wrote about it the next year, and I believe it was March or April. So again, it took about a year and 4 months. She literally, and she told me, she said, I want to see every press release that comes out from this company. So I was sending her a press release about every 2 weeks, and I did hear back on one. And she asked me at one point right before the holidays, is there anything they have before the holidays? So she was following them and watching them. And then when I hit her with what was basically a smaller niche release, it wasn't something big or, I was thinking, Wall Street Journal level story, but it was for her. And that again is where having these different stories, the regular flow of news comes out. That got her attention. It fit perfectly for something her editor had her working on literally for 6 months. And it became part of a big feature story where they ended up with some other companies mentioned on the cover of the technology section of the Wall Street Journal on a Monday, by the way, on a Monday. So I couldn't have asked for more than that. The client.
Jim and I, we know, we have a broad range of contacts. So sometimes we stay in touch and say, hey, FYI, this is taking place, and it's a way to stay present, we say, on their radar screen. So that's why the process we talked about, staying in touch with a steady flow of news or developments, or just staying up so that they remember you. So that's why it's a consistent process of staying in touch with the media, letting them know what's going on. Oh, this might be of interest. So sometimes it's a soft pitch as opposed to, hey, we have this hard news. Oh, by the way, this client is at this show. And, did you know they were speaking here? So soft pitch, hard pitch, consistent level of activity. And that's, to add to that is, you want to create buzz, the impression that this company is happening. So just like with your customers, you want to say, hey, you know what? Everybody's buying this technology. It's time for you to go too, without actually using those words. It's the same thing with the media. It's like we have a couple media covering a particular company or story. Well, you hit them up with another press release or another news alert, media alert that Jim alluded to. Well, at some point, the media, they can't ignore you, or they should not ignore you anytime. So that helps to generate leads and articles.
Actually,
as well.
Dave, you brought up something else that we could even comment on this for a moment, and if anybody has any questions, besides your traditional press release, say, and this goes into a little bit into what you're talking about here, Brian, your question. Dave mentioned speaking engagements, as well as awards, company awards. These are a whole nother aspect of things that for various different trade shows, conferences, industry events, we can go after presenting you as a speaker there. So, and you may be a small startup, but if you're doing something new and different, something unique, that makes you of interest, especially even to a niche audience. So you have the potential to do speaking engagements or to do, say, webinars like this. do a regular series of webinars on what makes you and your company, your technology, say different. And then, of course, there are awards. Now, even for small companies, if you're coming up and doing something new and better, maybe it's faster, maybe it's more efficient, or heck, maybe it's just simply cheaper for the customers in that market. If you're doing something like that, then you should be going up for industry awards. And industry awards are something great that the media will take notice of. The speaking engagements, many media sit in on speaking engagements as well as webinars and presentations online just like this.
Okay. Another question is like, it seems like people are not talking virus marketing as much as before. So is there any specific reason about that?
I missed that. Brian, can you repeat it?
Yeah, people just don't talk about virus marketing as much as before, right? So from my understanding, so is there any like specific reason about that? Or they think that it's really hard to do that kind of virus marketing stuff?
Viral marketing?
Yeah.
Viral marketing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we misunderstood.
Viral marketing.
Yeah.
Jim, you want to take that one?
Well, viral marketing is something that there was something that I try to avoid anything negative. I like to think positive. Let's all think positive. We're all going ahead, working forward. We're all going to be rich and powerful, right? However, there was, when social media started getting big, there was a literal war for a while between social media and, say, Facebook, which was leading that charge, and traditional PR and media. And a lot of people, that's how a lot of people, to go off with Chandler and his question, that many just do social media. Others are just doing traditional media. But the bottom line is what a lot of people didn't see, and Dave and I saw this early on, that's why I am actually a listed social media influencer. I'm listed by BuzzSumo and several others, anywhere from I'm number 11 on one list, Analytica, to number 19, 28, 41, you name it. So I do create content and I share it through Twitter, LinkedIn, and others. The thing is, though, is they actually work great together. And what I think a lot of people, what happened is when there was the huge fake news crash of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg made a comment that we're going to take over the news. We're going to own and do it all. Well, that didn't work out the way he planned it because the fake news, kind of blew up in their face. What's happened, though, rather than seeing like any other kind of scraps or wars between, now people are seeing, wait a minute, there is value to both. You can present to people through their favorite social channels, and whether that be Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, the one that they use the most, the one that they're on the most, you can present news, you can present infographics, you can present videos, even just simple comments you make. And the impact is great. At the same time, take advantage of the news. Like I said earlier in the presentation, use both. If you can, use both. And they really do work well hand in hand, because for every news story that Dave and I place, whether it's in a trade publication, TechCrunch, or the Wall Street Journal, you can share that on all of those social channels where you have followers. And the more big news pieces you put out, and you use the right hashtags, of course, the more you're getting in front of the kind of people that you want to attract through social media as well. And thereby your audience there can go from, there's a winery I worked on for a while. When they started off, they had, I think it was 39 followers. When I left there after 1 year, they had over 400 followers. And that's just from placing a couple of stories for them and doing the right with social media. A little bit of PR, a little bit of social media, and it paid off in a big way for them. So again, it really works well to do both. And I think that the viral marketing kind of took a bit of a hit because of the fake news. So many people are kind of tired of spam. Okay, and spam was a big thing with emails back, and that kind of shows you my age. Yes, I'm 50, I'm going to turn 51 soon. But I remember getting spam email. And like I said, as a media person, I used to get probably of those, I'd get on average 50 to 150 emails a day. And I would say that at least 10 or 12 of those were always somebody trying to sell me something. And it really is, it's a waste of all of our time. It's the same thing. When you look at, say, Twitter, for example, or LinkedIn, there's always somebody trying to get you to buy something or buy their product or service. and it's not anything that you would normally be interested in. For example, I was once offered a typewriter through email. A typewriter through email and a computer. The best one, though, I was offered. Okay, this will be a little laugh for everybody. I got a tweet offering me feminine hygiene products. Now, I know these are necessary for women, but why I got that in Twitter when there's a picture of me, a guy there, you know, I mean, this is where, again, marketing goes a little bit awry. So, and that's where I think the viral, because they're just kind of spamming it out to too many people.
Right. So I think customizing and really understanding, just to jump in, is really understanding your market, your audience, what do they want, and what will motivate them, and then zoning in on that. Any other questions?
If there is no more questions, I think we are done for today. And so Jennifer got another question, or
Jennifer.
Clapping. Thank you, Jennifer. If that's just a clap, thank you. If it's a question, we look to it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. And if anybody has any questions, look us. Jim and I are on LinkedIn, Twitter, Meetup. David at the DFI Group.net. If you know, we would be happy to, if you wanted to, you know, brainstorm your plan or marketing plan, and you want to get the comms perspective, how that fits in. We're happy to take 30-minute calls on that. If anybody likes, just hit us up, and happy to arrange that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Thank you, Brian, for inviting
Brian,
us.
thank you.
And
okay.
hope it was of value, and everybody enjoy the rest of the sunny day in the GTA anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want everybody to have a great weekend.
You too, guys.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye.